Welcome to our channel. Welcome to our channel, where stories come alive and learning becomes an exciting journey. Here, we explore fascinating topics from history, culture, and everyday life, all while helping you improve your English in a natural and enjoyable way. One of the best ways to learn English is through shadowing, listening carefully and repeating what you hear at the same time. This method helps you improve your pronunciation, fluency, and confidence. As you listen to our stories, try to repeat the sentences, copy the rhythm, and speak along with the narrator. With practice, your English will become smoother and more natural. Now, let's begin our story. The surprising history of chess, how a game conquered the entire world. Imagine a battlefield with no blood, no weapons, and no real soldiers. The battlefield has only 64 squares. Two small armies face each other. Each army has a king, a queen, 2 knights, 2 bishops, 2 rooks, and 8 ordinary soldiers called pawns. The battle begins with a single move. There are no dice. There is no luck. Every decision has a consequence. A small mistake can destroy an entire plan, while one brilliant move can turn certain defeat into victory. This is chess, a game that has survived kingdoms, wars, revolutions, and technological change. But chess did not appear in its modern form overnight. It traveled across continents, entered royal courts, crossed deserts and seas, changed its pieces, transformed its rules, and became one of the most widely recognized games in human history. This is the surprising story of how chess conquered the world. Chapter 1. The Birth of a Battlefield. Most historians believe that an early form of chess appeared in India around the 6th century. The game was known as Chaturanga, a Sanskrit word connected with the 4 divisions of an ancient army: infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariots. These military divisions were represented on the board by pieces that later developed into the pawn, knight, bishop, and rook. Chaturanga was more than simple entertainment. It was a model of war. Players had to think like military commanders. They had to protect their leader, position their soldiers carefully, control important territory, and predict what their opponent might do next. The game taught an important lesson: strength alone does not guarantee victory. A powerful army can still lose when it is badly organized. No single inventor of chess is known. The game probably developed gradually, with different players contributing new rules and ideas. What began as a representation of an Indian battlefield would soon start an extraordinary journey. Chapter 2. Chess Travels to Persia. From India, the game traveled westward into Persia. There, Chaturanga developed into a game called Shatranj. Persian players changed some rules, created chess problems, recorded famous games, and treated skillful players with great respect. The king was called the Shah. Expressions connected with attacking and defeating the Shah eventually influenced the chess words used in many modern languages, including the word check. Chess became popular among Persian rulers and members of the royal court. It was not viewed merely as a way to pass the time. It was considered an exercise in intelligence, patience, discipline, and leadership. A player had to remain calm. Acting too quickly could lead to disaster. Attacking without preparation could expose the king. Sometimes the wisest decision was not to move forward, but to wait. These ideas helped transform chess into something deeper than a board game. It became a symbol of thoughtful leadership. Chapter 3. The Islamic world preserves and expands the game. After the Islamic conquest of Persia, Shatranj spread through the Islamic world. It traveled through major centers of learning, commerce, and culture. Scholars studied chess positions, wrote books about strategy, and developed difficult puzzles known as chess problems. The game spread westward through North Africa and eventually reached parts of Europe, particularly through regions such as Islamic Spain and Sicily. Chess pieces from the medieval Islamic world were often abstract rather than shaped like human beings. A king could be represented by a throne, while an elephant might be shown through simple carved projections. Several surviving sets demonstrate how the game was adapted to the artistic traditions of different societies. This was one of the secrets of chess's success. It could enter a new culture without completely losing its identity. Every society could make the game its own. Chapter 4. Chess enters medieval Europe. By the Middle Ages, chess had become popular across Europe. However, Europeans did not simply copy the game exactly as they received it. They changed its characters to reflect their own society. The Persian advisor beside the king gradually became a queen. The elephant was transformed into a bishop in many European traditions. The chariot became a castle-like rook, while the horseman developed into the knight. The bishop's transformation was especially interesting. In Indian and Islamic versions, the piece had represented an elephant. In medieval Europe, it became a powerful church official, reflecting the influence of religion and clergy in European society. The queen was another major European contribution. Beginning around the 12th century, queens gradually replaced the male advisors found in Persian and Islamic chess traditions. The board had now become a miniature picture of medieval European life: kings, queens, bishops, knights, castles, and ordinary foot soldiers. Chess was no longer just a game that had traveled into Europe. It had been culturally transformed. Chapter 5: The Queen Changes Everything. Early chess was much slower than the game played today. The piece that later became the queen was originally weak, and the early bishop also had limited movement. Games could continue for a very long time because powerful attacks were difficult to organize. Then, during the late 15th century, the rules changed dramatically in Europe. The queen gained the ability to move across the board in straight lines and diagonals. The bishop was also given its long-range diagonal movement. These changes made chess faster, sharper, and far more dangerous. The rules of the modern game were largely established in Spain during this period. Suddenly, the queen became the most powerful piece on the board. This transformed chess strategy. Players could launch rapid attacks, sacrifice material, and threaten the king much earlier in the game. One careless move could now lead to a sudden checkmate. The game became more dramatic and more exciting to watch. It was beginning to look like the chess we recognize today. Chapter 6: From Royal Courts to Public Cafés. For centuries, chess had been strongly associated with kings, nobles, military leaders, and wealthy scholars. But gradually, it moved beyond palaces. Chess clubs appeared in European cities. Players gathered in cafés, homes, schools, and public meeting places. Newspapers began publishing chess puzzles and reporting important matches. The game required no large field, expensive equipment, or physical strength. Two people needed only a board, 32 pieces, and enough time to think. This made chess highly portable. A chessboard could be placed in a palace, a village home, a railway station, a classroom, or a public park. People who did not speak the same language could still understand one another through moves on the board. Chess was becoming an international language. Chapter 7: The Birth of Competitive Chess. During the 19th century, chess became more organized. One important development was the introduction of the Staunton chess set in 1849. Its pieces were clear, balanced, and easy to recognize. The design became the standard for serious competition and remains familiar to players around the world. In 1851, London hosted what is widely regarded as the first modern international chess tournament. It brought strong players together and helped establish chess as a formal competitive activity. Then, in 1886, Wilhelm Steinitz defeated Johannes Zukertort in the first official World Chess Championship. Steinitz became the first officially recognized world champion. Steinitz also helped change the way chess was understood. Earlier players often preferred immediate attacks and spectacular sacrifices. Steinitz demonstrated that victory could be built slowly. A player could collect small advantages, improve the position of each piece, strengthen the king's safety, and attack only when the position was ready. Chess was becoming not only a contest, but also a serious field of study. Chapter 8: Chess Becomes a Global Sport. On July 20th, 1924, the International Chess Federation, known as FIDE, was founded in Paris. Its motto, Gens Una Sumus, means "We are one family." FIDE helped organize international events, establish titles, regulate major competitions, and connect national chess federations across the world. During the 20th century, chess became especially important in the Soviet Union. The country created training systems, chess schools, clubs, books, and national competitions. For decades, Soviet players dominated much of international chess. Players such as Mikhail Botvinnik, Mikhail Tal, Tigran Petrosian, Boris Spassky, and Anatoly Karpov became global figures. Chess was treated as a demonstration of education, planning, discipline, and intellectual strength. Then came one of the most famous matches in chess history. Chapter 9: The Match That Captured the World. In 1972, American challenger Bobby Fischer faced Soviet world champion Boris Spassky in Reykjavik, Iceland. The match occurred during the Cold War, when the United States and the Soviet Union were competing for global influence. Because of this political atmosphere, the championship felt like much more than a chess match. It became a symbolic confrontation between two superpowers. Millions of people who had never previously followed chess became interested. Newspapers reported the moves. Television programs discussed the players. Fischer's eventual victory made him one of the most famous chess players in history. The match proved that a silent game played by two people could capture the attention of the entire world. Chapter 10: Humans versus Machines. Chess later became an important challenge for computer scientists. Could a machine calculate well enough to defeat the strongest human players? For many years, the answer appeared to be no. Computers could examine many moves, but they lacked the intuition, creativity, and positional understanding of elite players. That changed in 1997. IBM's computer Deep Blue defeated reigning world champion Garry Kasparov in a 6-game match under standard tournament conditions. It was the first computer system to defeat a reigning world chess champion in such a match. The event became a major moment in the history of artificial intelligence. Some people feared that computers would destroy chess. Instead, they changed how the game was studied. Today, players use chess engines to analyze mistakes, test opening ideas, explore complicated positions, and prepare for opponents. Computers did not end human chess. They gave humans a powerful new teacher. Chapter 11: The Internet creates a new chess world. The Internet removed the final geographical barriers. A student in India could play someone in Brazil. A beginner in Oman could watch a grandmaster in Norway. A player could find an opponent at any hour without leaving home. Online games became faster and easier to organize. Video lessons, live broadcasts, digital puzzles, and international competitions introduced chess to new generations. Players no longer needed to belong to an expensive club or live in a major city. Anyone with an internet connection could begin learning. The board remained the same. The pieces remained the same. But the chess world had become larger than ever. Why did chess conquer the world? Chess survived because it offers something rare: simple rules combined with almost unlimited depth. A beginner can learn how the pieces move in a short time. However, even the strongest grandmasters continue studying throughout their lives. Chess also crosses many human boundaries. It does not require players to speak the same language. Age, nationality, wealth, and physical size do not determine the result. Once the game begins, both players have the same number of pieces and the same opportunities. Chess rewards patience, courage, imagination, concentration, and responsibility. Every move belongs to the player. There is no dice roll to blame. There is no teammate to accuse. A player must accept the consequences of every decision. That is why chess often feels like a reflection of life. Sometimes we must attack. Sometimes we must defend. Sometimes we must sacrifice something valuable to achieve a greater goal. And sometimes the smallest piece on the board, the ordinary pawn, can travel across the entire battlefield and become a queen. Conclusion: more than a game. Chess began as a representation of an ancient Indian army. It traveled to Persia, flourished throughout the Islamic world, entered medieval Europe, transformed its characters, changed its rules, moved from royal courts into public cafés, became an international sport, challenged the world's greatest minds, and eventually helped advance computer science. Few human inventions have crossed so many borders while remaining so recognizable. Today, when two players sit across a chessboard, they are participating in a tradition that is approximately 15 centuries old. The game is silent, but its history speaks loudly. Every pawn remembers the ancient foot soldier. Every knight carries the memory of cavalry. Every rook recalls the chariot. Every bishop carries the shadow of the elephant. And every checkmate connects the modern player with generations of thinkers who played the same extraordinary game. Chess did not conquer the world through force. It conquered the world through ideas. Thank you for watching and learning with us. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories and improve your English every day.